This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
All right, this is the one I can feel it. Podcast. The first and the best Chiefs podcast. Real ones know the show is called Amateur Hour. The Amateur Hour podcast is now airing on KC Sports Network. Ryan, Scott Hall, and HisDirkness are back again. We've got football, friendship, and fun. All these shows, we're still number one, season 12. Oh, wow, here it comes. Welcome, my friends, to Amateur Hour podcast. Man, I can't hit that note right. Podcast! Is that right? Well.
Don't worry, nobody's listening anyway.
What is this, amateur hour?
Yeah, I ain't no Superman businessman like you. You know, I'm just an
amateur,
I suppose.
Amateur Hour
Is what's happening.
Amateur Hour
Is what's happening.
Yeah, that's right, folks. Welcome into Amateur Hour. I am your fill-in host for today, HisDirkness. And joining me today, the man who tied the knot this weekend and finally popped his Duran cherry and has a new greatest 13 seconds in his life. It's Ryan Scott Hall.
Hey, that is me. That's very nice, Dirk. Thank you for acknowledging my great accomplishments. I am spoken for. Got a ring on it and everything. It's silicone, folks. Spared no expense.
We just lost half our audience by you saying that you are spoken for. Way to go.
Oh, sorry, ladies. What's that? That was in that thing you do. Like, watch out, ladies. He's got a girlfriend. And then Jimmy freaks out.
I think everybody was wondering why I missed the wedding, and the answer is pretty simple. And I had reservations at Skyline Chili that I simply could not break, so I was not able to make it. I've apologized to you in private, and now I will do it publicly.
Is that a restaurant or like a style? I've never been to Cincinnati. I think if I went, it would be for a Chiefs game. And I would want to eat, like, begrudgingly eat the Skyline to be like, I'm going to, like, consume my enemy's power. Like, if I eat the Skyline, I will absorb its strength.
That's what I was doing all week. I was having some existentialist crises during the bye week. I take these hard. I need the Chiefs every week. Otherwise, I'm trying on Broncos helmets. I'm eating Skyline chili. I'm wearing a Jaguars jersey right here. It's been a long week. But here is the plan for today, folks. We are resting the starters, and that's why we got Dirk under center. So get ready, folks. And since the bye week is time for reflection, we are going to revisit the 10 questions we asked before the season. But before that, I have a bonus question. And that's where we're going to start, and we're going to help set the table for the rest of 2023 with this here question. Are we having fun yet? Shout out to Party Down for anyone who got that. But yeah, I just want to do a quick. I've had this on the docket for a few weeks now. We haven't been able to get to it. I can really sense the frustration from Chiefs fans all season long. It's possible this is a Twitter thing, but that is kind of our Chiefs family at this point. We have our privates here at home or here and there that we talk to. But I think a lot of us, you and I, and then a lot of people listening, just, spend a lot of time on Twitter, and it's just a lot of people frustrated about, the wide receiver room, the team just not looking the same that we're used to, third and shorts, fourth down decisions, all of this. So I just want to make sure everybody is enjoying this season. So just a quick reminder to everybody that we are in the midst of Patrick Mahomes' prime, and that each and every NFL fan base would trade spots with us right now in a second. And we might not ever be in this situation again as fans. So we had better enjoy it. And after sitting through 3.5 hours of watching the worst quarterback I've ever seen play for the University of Nebraska, I'm going to make damn sure that I appreciate the best quarterback that I've ever seen. who is so good that he is having by far his worst season and yet remains the clear-cut favorite to win an NFL MVP. He's actually might be second today. He kind of lost the favorite to Jalen Hurts over the bye week. They both had bye weeks. I don't understand it all. But the point remains, he is still one of the contenders to win NFL MVP in a down year. This is kind of reminiscent of us winning a Super Bowl in a down year or in a rebuilding year last year. But sitting back in our bye week and taking it all in served as a great reminder that all NFL teams are imperfect, which is what makes this sport so great. I mean, just look around the league. Our top two rivals, the Bills and Bengals, both currently out of the playoffs, looking in. The Ravens were the hot team in the league. They lose at home. The Texans are everybody's darling now, but just 2 weeks ago, they lost to the lowly Panthers. The ebbs and flows of an NFL season are wild, like waves in the ocean, man. So I just want to make sure that Chiefs fans are riding those waves and not drowning in them. So yes, losing to the Broncos sucked. Sure, I would like to have better receivers. And you better believe we should still be playing Gary Glitter at a sponsorless Arrowhead Stadium. But just my 2 cents. Now we get to watch some of the best to ever do it. Go back to the lab during the bye week where Andy Reid thrives and get a chance to solve this in a Super Bowl rematch at home in primetime with a chance for Andy Reid to pass Hank Stram as the all-time leader in wins in franchise history against his former team. And I just don't think it gets better than that, folks. So I just want to make sure everyone's enjoying their season and set the table for 2023. That's what I got. That's my opening monologue.
Loved it, Dirk. You make some very salient points. I've been thinking about this, and I have a slightly different approach or take here.
I am miserable.
I'm not miserable. But it has been, I would say 9 challenging weeks. But here's what I think. Here's why. During the Andy Reid era, I'd say 70%, maybe even more than 70% of the time, attention and energy that we give to the Chiefs, it's been about Andy Reid. It's been about the offense, and more importantly, his quarterbacks. This is what we do here. We talk about the offense. And he is, without question, one of the best offensive head coaches in NFL history. He's about to become, as you mentioned, the winningest coach for 2 different franchises, by the way. Already the winningest coach in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles. And they're no slouch in terms of being a franchise, all right? This isn't like the Panthers we're talking about here. Burying some of the more recent joiners to the NFL.
Both of us buried the Panthers in our opening monologue. Suck it, Panthers.
How about that, David Tepper? Look, he's about to become the winningest coach for 2 separate historic NFL franchises. He has the best player in the world running things on the field, and yet still somehow he's coaching a defensive football team in 2023. With that in mind, I'm personally wrestling with the fact that I feel unprepared to talk about this team in multiple ways. Let's think about it. Let's just put this in perspective. Although I saw great defenses while attending Schottenheimer University in my youth, I was basically a boy at that time. Okay? Basically a boy. And since then, as I've grown up and watched this game, it has changed significantly. Now, suddenly it feels like the year of the defense, both in Kansas City and across the NFL, and we're all, except maybe Craig, severely out of practice when it comes to giving the defense not just equal, but perhaps even a slight majority of the attention. The Chiefs defense, to me, they are the story of this season. And yet, our bottom line confidence depends on Patrick Mahomes. No matter how good all the other things are, we believe in Patrick Mahomes. We believe because of Patrick Mahomes. It's almost the polar opposite of the Alex Smith era where they had to perfect everything to support him, and we still struggled to buy in because we knew how thin the margin of error was. Well, now, even though the Chiefs have a ton of non-Mahomes advantages, including one of the best units in all of football, run by a bona fide postseason hero in Steve Spagnuolo, it's still against our nature, especially in the modern era of Chiefs fans, to think about this team winning a championship, quote unquote, because of the defense. And yet that may be the way this season. I think it's going to be a bumpy ride for us trying to learn how to really lead with the defense, because that's what the team is doing. And I think we need to honor that as we cover them. But look, we're always going to try to steer everybody in the right direction. Welcome to Amateur Hour. It might be a little wonky at times. I'm trying to figure it out, but I genuinely am at times kind of at a loss as to how to talk about a football team that is defense first suddenly in 2023. It just runs against everything that we've grown accustomed to over the last few years. So I think that might in some ways explain like that kind of discomfort that fans are feeling, maybe distaste that they have for how the season is playing out a little bit, at least as far as, the smoothness of the offense or whatever. But that's kind of where I'm at. That's where I'm at.
Nice. I love it. Waxing poetic about the defense.
Yeah.
It's just a crazy time. I mean, the Chiefs and Eagles are about to kick off here. I think most people would agree the unquestioned two best teams in the league right now, and yet both of them have their clear deficiencies. Chiefs offense not playing up to par, and the Eagles pass defense can really get got. I mean, if you can block them up front, that secondary has been chopped liver for most of this year. And we're going to do a little Chiefs-Eagles preview at the end, but we are going to start off with these 10 questions. But first, we are going to take a break.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
Well, folks, registration is now open for the boys and girls clubs of Greater Kansas City's Basketball League. This league is a great introductory, in fact, experience for any young person just developing their hooping skills. All the games are played on Saturdays. They start up in January, so you still have time to kind of get in here. And remember, folks, as we've told you the last few weeks, the postseason tournament for these kids that are really just trying to cut their teeth in the game, it actually is played at the CBE, the nationally recognized college basketball experience. So register your child today. What do you got to lose? Check the link in the show notes. Get your kids signed up. Let's play some hoops.
Looking for a way to make a big impact in Kansas City? Boys and girls clubs of Greater Kansas City need sponsors for their sports teams and leagues. Help local kids while promoting your business throughout the metro. Email giving@helpkckids.org for more information. Go on and do it. Go on and do it. We should sponsor one. We should sponsor one as a podcast.
Ooh.
A little amateur hour team.
I like that. Who's going to coach? I mean, I'm technically here, but I'm not volunteering to coach basketball.
I hear Ken Dorsey is looking for a job.
Hey-yo. Ken Dorsey, if I remember, do I have this in my mind correctly? Ken Dorsey was like the 27-year-old national champion quarterback at Miami?
No, I think you're thinking of Chris Winkie at Florida State. Ken Dorsey was normal age. I mean, he might have been a little older, but he led that great Miami team that everybody looks back at with all the talent.
Early 2000s.
Yeah, and I thought Ken Dorsey was really good. I always thought he would be good in the pros, but that was one of those things. All right, let's get into the 10 questions because we got a lot to get through today, and doubtful we're going to get through it in just an hour. We're going to make producer Nick stay way over time. We didn't tell him that beforehand, and that was on purpose. So suck on that, Nick. But question number 1. So these are the 10 questions we asked prior to the season. We're just going to kind of look at them and fly through them, see whatever jumps out, and see, we're going to kind of reflect on the entire season up to this point, and take it from there. Question number 1 from the season: what can the Chiefs learn from the 2020 season to help them in 2023? Honestly, I thought I'd be following this a lot closer than I'd have all season. But I've never really questioned if this team was really fat and happy with their success. Like this question was kind of driven by, does the team keep their edge or do they give into like the disease of more kind of thing? And that's where they just don't really have that fight. I have never really questioned their effort at any point this season. I think it's just been an offensive struggle. That's nothing effort wise, but this is all a good thing. I've never really drawn back to that season too much. And I've enjoyed the season much more, to be honest. That season was just kind of a snooze. I don't know. Maybe it was just the COVID fans. I thought it was coming off that Super Bowl and it was just kind of like the regular season was kind of a bore after, sitting through a playoffs and experiencing your first Super Bowl like that. And really, I don't know. It feels different this season. I'm locked in pretty much every week. And the close games kind of keep it like that. But anything to add on this first question here, Ryan?
If you guys don't remember, I went back and looked today. 2020, obviously, we know it's the COVID year. Run it back, blah, blah, blah. The Raiders won in week 5. The Chiefs were 4-0. They lose to the Raiders at Arrowhead, and the Raiders do the victory lap thing. The Chiefs then rattle off 10 straight victories and rest their starters against the Chargers for their second loss of the season. This team was essentially, I want to say, untested. They lose the one game to a division rival, and that was literally that team's Super Bowl. And apart from that, the Super Bowl was a disaster because of these many extenuating circumstances, but largely injuries on the offensive line and a huge distraction off the field with Andy Reid's son. And so, I want to be able to look back because, hey, you won a Super Bowl and what happened the next year. But it just seems like 2020 was so unique that there's not necessarily a lot that we can take from it. I do think that they also went through a lot of roster changes this offseason, and in 2019 to 2020, it was literally let's get the band back together, try to keep everybody on board. So,
which I think is really important. I think you always kind of want guys who haven't won before, and they want to get their first taste, and I think that helps other guys rally around them. And we want to help get him a ring. Like I know, like Mahomes and Kelce have already got rings, but like we want to win this for Jerick McKinnon. Like he's a veteran in this league, been here a long time. Like he cares about winning a lot, and we want to kind of go out there and win one for him, and like see other guys on your team experience that feeling as long as you as well as you experience it again. But that question was kind of a whiff. 0 for 1 on preseason questions. I can take that. That's right. I start out the season just like the Chiefs. That's fine. I can bounce back. Preseason question number 2 here. Is the new Chris Jones the forever Chris Jones? And this was just kind of, we saw a different Chris Jones in the 2022 season that we hadn't really seen before, in my opinion. And he was just kind of locked in. There have been questions before about him bringing it, on 100% of the snaps, always locked in, kind of taking plays off, drives off, maybe even games off. And we didn't really see that last year. And he came through time and time again with sacks in the fourth quarter, making big plays, all the way up to the AFC Championship game when he got his revenge against Joe Burrow after missing the sack against him in 2021. So it was a really poetic season for Chris Jones. And my question was just kind of, we were asking a lot of questions about his contract at the time, but like, is that the Chris Jones that we're going to keep seeing? And I got to say, I'm not so sure. He feels like he's kind of back to like his one splash play a week kind of ways. Haven't really seen the big plays at the end of games, and he's been quiet for about 3 weeks now. Like, I'm not saying he's been bad. Chris Jones is still really good. And he's a big part of this defense that is really good. So I'm not shitting at him, but like a lot of this question is kind of looking forward to, do we want to pay Chris Jones huge money on a multi-year deal next year? And this is the kind of question you got to ask yourself if you're going to do that. So I think I don't really know how to answer this question. I don't think he's been as good as he was last year. But there's still time, and I'm not like disappointed in his season, even though I think he has had a quiet couple weeks the last few weeks. What are your thoughts on Chris Jones?
I find myself in a really interesting spot with him because it really felt like, especially when he got on the field in week 2, it's just like, oh my gosh, this dude is dynamite.
That week was 2022 of Chris Jones. Sorry.
Um, I definitely, when you mentioned the splash plays, like going back to kind of one splash play a week, it does kind of feel like that's where we're at. I was also, one of the things I was really curious about to see how it plays this season is like Chris Jones led the league in defensive snaps at his position last year. He was number one in his position in all these different categories, but like that playing the most snaps was a huge deal to me because we had always kind of questioned his fitness and his effort on some of those run plays where it's like, do you even want him on the field that much? Like, would you rather him be able to pick his spots and use him kind of sparingly? And I look at these past 3 weeks when he broke the sack streak 3 weeks ago. So now we're talking the 3 most recent games for Chris Jones. Gosh, I really fumbled that. Forgive me. The last 3 games for Chris Jones, 86%, 74%, and like 86% again of the snaps. So he's still playing a really high percentage. He's basically getting the most snaps of anybody on our defense outside of people like Snead and Reed and McDuffie. I think Chris Jones is way up there. It's looking doubtful that he hits the Defensive Player of the Year or the 15 sack incentives that he added to his contract. But nothing is fully out of reach. These things can come in bunches. He might, against the Eagles, go have 3 sacks and suddenly like, oh shit, here he comes. I do think that he has an opportunity over the final, let's call it 7 games of the year rather than 8, because that last game is usually Chiefs resting people. He's got an opportunity to really put himself on the map and earn himself a lot of money. It's a contract year, so we'll see. And ultimately, I do think that where it matters, I guess, for the Chiefs is whether or not they believe it. Whether we believe it or not doesn't necessarily matter. But if the team believes we can get this kind of play and this kind of production out of Chris Jones for the next 2 or 3 or 4 seasons, however much money we want to give him, then that might sway their decision. But ultimately, I think he's probably going to be playing elsewhere in 2024. That's what you think?
You think right now? I
think so.
I kind of think so too. It just seemed like maybe it soured a little bit. But man, there was a time early in the season I was just like, Chris Jones is in the conversation for best defensive player in the league. I don't think I would quite put him there now. I think there's definitely a tier, Garrett and Watt and Bosa, maybe a couple other guys that are, I think, a clear head above him. Not that that's a bad thing. I mean, that's a tough class to be in. He's the very best. It's tough to do. But yeah, interesting to keep your eye on. All right, let's move on. Number 3 here. Do the Chiefs have enough pass rush around Chris Jones, puff? So this question, we were really worried about the Chiefs pass rush outside of Chris Jones, especially over the first 6 weeks of the season, because we had the Jones holdout, which we didn't know how it was going to go, the Ominahu suspension, obviously, and then Felix in his rookie year. And it was just like, all right, I mean, we need basically George Karlaftis and Mike Dana to take big steps here. And they both did. This question has kind of been answered in a resounding yes. The theory behind the question here was the sacks per year. So then in the Chiefs' 2 Super Bowl years, 2022 and 2019, they ranked 2nd and 11th in sacks. And in the 2 years that they did not win the Super Bowl, 2020 and 2021, they were 30th and 19th in sacks. So it's kind of like a theory that, like, for this defense to be good, they need to be able to get after the quarterback and get sacks. I mean, we've obviously seen at this point that the Chiefs defense is good, and they also rank 2nd in sacks, even coming out of the bye week. So the Chiefs have passed this with flying colors. George taking a big step. Dana, solid NFL player. Amina, who has flashed in his few games here. Jones is still really good. I would love to see more Felix personally. But, it's just kind of a tough room to break into right now. What are your thoughts on the pass rush so far?
I mean, they're among the best in the league, especially if you're just looking at the actual pass rush production numbers. Karlaftis continues to be in like the top 5 in pressures. The Chiefs, before the bye week, were number 2 in sacks. And it's largely due to this uncharacteristically fast start from Spags and friends despite the fact that they didn't have Chris Jones in week 1 and they didn't have Charles Omenihu for the first, 5 or 6 games. I think that the answer has to be that, yes, they have enough around Chris Jones, regardless of how you look at this question. Like if you look at strictly on the defensive line, guys like Karlaftis and Dana and even Derek Nottie, even Tershawn Wharton, like you are getting consistent production from these guys. They're making an impact on a down-to-down basis, but you can also look at all of these auxiliary pieces, both in coverage and when blitzing, and they're making everything easier. So, like, I don't care if you want to look just at the defensive line or you want to look at Spags being able to blitz Snead and McDuffie and the linebackers and the safeties and everything else. You know, I mean, even Jalen Watson got in on the action against Miami. And so I don't, it's Spags.
Which we're going to get to here in question 4. That's a very direct lead in. I actually listened to our preseason pods to prepare for this here podcast, just to see what we were talking about.
Tape, huh?
Yeah, well, I mean, I kind of like to go back and,
the AHPKC all 22.
You got to self scout. You got to know what the fans are looking at. Coming into down the stretch here, we got to see where we're at. But a couple fun quotes here from Ryan. It's going to be a slow start on defense, no matter what.
Of course, it's certainly how it looked.
From Dirk, it might just be survival mode on defense at the beginning of the season. we were not jacked about this defense before the season. I actually came in at the end with George might be the key to this team. With all the questions around the defensive line and needing a pass rush, the first guy you're going to look at is your first round pick from last year, George Karlaftis. And I would say he's answered that in a big way. I don't think he's a star or anything yet, but he is better than I thought he would be when we drafted him, and he's better than he thought he would be coming into this year. So he has surpassed my expectations pretty much every step along the way. So I've been very impressed with George Karlaftis. But that led directly into question 4. Like I said, are the Chiefs cornerbacks strong enough to unleash the Spags? And this was, talk about a resounding yes. You kind of talked about it, getting all these sacks. A lot of it, I mean, just look at the Dolphins game. That's all I got to look at it. All the pieces flying in from the edge, all these safeties that can blitz, all these corners that can come in off the edge, and their coverage skills is really completely unleashing the Spags. We went into depth on this last week. If you want to hear us talk about Spags, from the 40-minute mark on last week's pod, we just gushed over Spagnuolo, where I thought I had an original idea calling him the Chiefs MVP. Little did I know that every single person on this here network was going to join me in calling him the Chiefs MVP. I tried to get out in front of it. Didn't quite get out in front of it, but, I'll join the party. I'll sit around and hang out with the guys. I don't have to be first. But yeah, what are your thoughts on, the corner so far and Spags getting unleashed and everything here in the back end?
I think we already suspected to a certain extent that, at least as far as Snead and McDuffie were concerned, we've got a couple of good ones. We liked Watson. You and I think, liked Watson more than Williams. There are other people that seem to prefer Williams and the athleticism that he brings to the table. Look, I still think, though, that regardless of how we felt entering the season, it's been an absolutely meteoric rise for this group as a whole. It's kind of staggering how quickly all of the corners on this team have adapted. And really, if you even want to extend it to the safeties and just say the back end, you've got new roles for a lot of the veterans, whether it's Snead mostly, almost exclusively playing outside. Justin Reid is not really playing at the back of the defense anymore. Most of the time he's closer to the line of scrimmage and covering tight ends and stuff. You've got new careers for all of these young guys. And even if you want to go back to the veterans, like Tranquil is back in the middle because of Bolton, but trying to find his spot in this defense, Mike Edwards being more of a sub player. You've got a lot of different guys. And then you also have new signings coming in. This defense wasn't here's a whole bunch of entrenched starters that have been playing their positions and they've been playing together forever. It's still a lot of guys that are adapting, particularly in that secondary. And they still are rotating guys too, like whether it's Williams or Watson any given week, who knows? And
Jimmy Cherry?
And honestly, really the guy I think that jumps out to me as the person I think I least expected it from. And this dates all the way back to the time that he was drafted. And, it's a little easy to say something like, I didn't expect a lot from Jalen Watson, who was a 7th round pick. All right. But I really didn't expect much from Brian Cook. I never did. They took him in the 2nd round, and I saw, okay, so he initially went to Howard, and then he transferred to Cincinnati, and he did a couple good things, but he was on this loaded defense full of guys that were all being drafted in the first 3 rounds. It seemed like they reached on a guy that they kind of liked, but Brian Cook didn't feel like he was really in the conversation as a 2nd rounder to me. And now in year 2, there are moments where I think he's our best safety. He's constantly around the ball. He's an absolutely exceptional tackler. Obviously, we're kind of recency bias going out on a high note before the bye week with the touchdown return.
Boy can gallop.
But I'm telling you, man, I think that Brian Cook is kind of my big surprise defensively so far this year. You can point in any number of directions, but he really feels like a leader and a very important player on that back end. And I did not expect him to be this good, this fast at all.
And I mean, going to Brian Cook, I saw a stat today that was kind of charting explosive plays allowed on defense. And the Chiefs were 2nd to last in, most explosive plays allowed on defense through the pass. And a lot of that points directly to Brian Cook because I think he's the safety that's playing the deepest. Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of his territory, like giving up those deep plays that kind of, doesn't fall directly on him, but a lot of it falls on him because he's back there a lot. And the Chiefs have given up fewer than almost everybody in the league. So, yeah, all the bright spots there. Before we get to question 5, let's take another break right now.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
Dirk, I have been wondering, did you know that we're about to be in week 11 of the NFL season? Week 11?
This is when I started to get depressed. It's going too fast.
Look, we got to start to make every second count, not just because it's Patrick Mahomes' prime, but because the season will be over before you know it. And with DraftKings Sportsbook, you can make the most out of every single game day. You get to bet on your favorite teams for a shot at winning big bucks. Everybody likes money, right? I like money.
I like losing money.
Yeah.
Apparently, I guess. I don't know.
Well, new customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets if you bet $5 on any matchup. So get in on the action with DraftKings Sportsbook. It's an official sports betting partner of the NFL. You download the app now using code KCSN. We got to maybe get another code in there, AHPKCSN potentially, but right now it's just the 4 letters.
Put it in there, see what happens.
New customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on the NFL, only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code KCSN. The crown is yours. And look, if you have a gambling problem, you got to call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, you can call 877-8-OPEN-Y or text OPEN-Y. In West Virginia, www.1-800-GAMBLER.net. Please play responsibly. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, you got to be 21 or older in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gambling resources. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/football. Terms. Dirk, let's do question 5.
Huh. Oh, awesome. You stumbled over that like you almost don't have a gambling problem, Ryan. If you had a gambling problem, you'd have those numbers memorized.
Correct.
Like the rest of us.
I know.
All right, question 5. We're going to be quick on this one. Does the AFC have 8 of the best 10 teams in the NFL? We were just kind of looking at the balance of power in the AFC and NFC being very lopsided towards the AFC. It didn't start out that way, but I think it has kind of shifted back that way. Before the season, 8 of the top 11 teams in Super Bowl odds were all in the AFC. I'm going to fire off some contenders tiers here. You just let me know what you object to.
Contenders tiers.
Yeah, so this is going to be, are they championship contenders? NFC. 49ers and Eagles, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Lions and Cowboys, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Seattle, maybe. And nobody else.
I mostly agree. I honestly think that I have as much intrigue about the possibility of the Minnesota Vikings as I do the Seattle Seabags. The Dobbs thing is just so interesting. It seems like Kevin O'Connell is just absolutely enamored with him. Justin Jefferson had a real nice, I can't wait to get back on the field. He's all hyped up about playing with Dobbs. You've got the what do they call it? The Ewing theory. Sans Kirk Cousins here potentially. But even some Ewing theory because the Vikings went on a run after Justin Jefferson got hurt. So
double Ewing theory.
Some interesting stuff going on in Minnesota. I will say that it's it shouldn't be a surprise, I think, to a lot of people, despite the fact that they got blown out recently, that Seattle is kind of in that mix, especially after going out and acquiring a Leonard Williams to be able to pair with another good interior player already. Seattle's got some interesting pieces for sure. I think that those 3 tiers, though, you're largely correct. I would say it's probably, rather than like the 80-20 of the top 10 contenders, I think it's probably closer to 60-40 because I do think that the Lions and Cowboys are firmly in that conversation.
I gotcha. Yeah, and I actually picked Seattle in the preseason just because I liked them and I wanted to be a little different. Been a little underwhelmed with Geno, I would say. Right now, I think I would say the Lions. I really like what the Lions are doing. And their defense is better than I thought it would be. And their offense is just kind of a machine right now. Those 2 running backs, that running game is electric.
Can I say that it's almost feels like the Lions are ahead of schedule? I didn't think that they would be this good. And especially when I look at that roster, I still don't know. I mean, don't get me wrong, Laporta, I guess. I don't know how Josh Reynolds is a very legitimate number 2 wide receiver in the NFL right now.
Well, I think he's just okay. I mean, Amon-Ra is a monster.
Yes.
And the running game, and then the defense is better. And then Laporta, I think they just have multiple weapons. I wouldn't look at the number 2 wide receiver necessarily, but just the collection of guys. Let's jump over to the AFC here. I've got Chiefs and Ravens, definitely. Dolphins and Bengals and Jags, probably. Browns, Texans. I wrote this before the game last night, and Bills, maybe. I might have to take the Bills off there. Although, do they get the jump here from firing their OC? And I actually like Joe Brady, the guy who's going to come in and fill the spot. So I could see maybe a spark from that. They have a chance to turn their season around by beating the Chiefs. That's their chance. You might not like their chances to do that, but that is their chance to get back in here. And then I would say no on Chargers, Steelers, Jets, Raiders, and Colts, who are all still firmly in the mix. The AFC playoff picture is wild right now. It's basically that New England sucks and everybody else is pretty alive. But yeah, the AFC is wild. Any big obstructions there? Obstructions? Objections.
It is awfully muddy. Yeah, objections, Your Honor. Well, the Bengals are scary, but I don't know if I would put them in probably right now. I feel like the Bengals are in this situation where it's a different version of some of what the Chiefs have gone through, but it kind of feels like the Bengals can't get out of their own way a little bit.
5-4 each of the last 2 years when they have made their runs. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but they were. That's what they've been the last 2 years.
Okay. That's a fair point. I didn't know that. Thanks for teaching me something. The Bills thing is interesting. I think that Joe Brady was probably overqualified to be working as their quarterback's coach.
I think that's why they fired him, because they had him there, and I don't know, you're probably going to lose him like that. That seems like a hot name. I don't know how he's the quarterback coach there.
Yeah, I was really surprised that he ended up in that position. So, I mean, there's plenty of arguments to be made that Ken Dorsey isn't necessarily responsible for Josh Allen turning the ball over at the highest rate since he entered the league. You get that stat from Nick Wright that like every single year since Josh Allen has been in the league, it doesn't matter. He has the most turnovers since 2017, 18, 19, 20, right?
Yep.
So I mean, I don't know. The Bills are interesting to me. Them going Jets, Eagles, bye week, Chiefs. That's pretty much their season. That's pretty much their season right there at what, 5-5?
5-5.
Yeah.
Yep. And Billy Pesto already talking to me about hiring Eric Bieniemy, which is kind of interesting.
Ooh, I can't wait to talk about Eric Bieniemy later.
All right. Yep. That's down the docket here. Let's keep it going. All right. Question 6. How does Patrick Mahomes follow up the greatest quarterback season of all time? This is an interesting one. I would say it's one of his 2 worst seasons, most definitely. It's this year in 2021. And it's so weird to me. I think it's a really fun, interesting conversation that he is the front runner for MVP while having his worst season. It's just because there's nobody else. Like the NFL MVP discussion right now it's fickle. Like nobody has jumped out whatsoever. So we're just kind of listing the quarterbacks of the best teams, even though none of them have really jumped off the page. I mean, it's Hurts has thrown a lot of picks this year. He's turned it over more than he has last year, I believe, already. Lamar, but his stats aren't great. Tua, but he's failed in the big games, and people think it's the system. There's just nobody really jumping out at the top. Any thoughts on the MVP talk? Or I got some stats here on Mahomes' season that might point to it being his worst.
I kind of had some contextual. This is arguably and I think honestly clearly his worst season. Obviously he's in a close race for MVP right now. I think depending on the site that you look at, he is either 1 or 2, and it's him and Hurts, and then like a bump down and it's Lamar and Tua, as you mentioned. Honestly, I think it just says a lot about the 2023 NFL season. Like, we don't think that Mahomes is playing well. And like I was listening to the Ringer Fantasy Show the other day, and they were talking about CJ Stroud and how few times he's turned the ball over, and talking about Lamar and Tua and all these different guys. And they get back around, and at the very end, Danny Kelly's like, I think it's still Mahomes for me. He's just doing more with less. And yeah, it doesn't look as good, but like, I think it's Mahomes. And like, this is a guy that he's not like in any way biased toward the Chiefs. And I'm like, man, is this like what national people think? They're like, I guess I just have to go with Mahomes here. They
call it like a default pick. Like nobody's jumped out. So it's just like, just give it to the best player kind of thing. And I think it's universally accepted that he is the best player.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird. You just don't see a season like this very often. If the season, this is more a projection than anything, and people got to keep that in mind. Like Mahomes is going to turn it on, and that's why he's the favorite to win MVP. If the season ended now, I don't think he'd be top 3 personally. I don't know who it would. Like Nick Wright's out here making a case for Myles Garrett. A couple stats here on the season he's had. He had 12 turnovers all of last year. He's already at 10 this year. That's interceptions and fumbles. Adjusted yards per attempt. That's basically yards per attempt that incorporates touchdowns and interceptions positively and negatively. This is throughout his career. 9.6 in 2018, 8.9, 8.9, down to 7.6 in 2021 with a dip, up to 8.5 last year, and then back down to 7.3 this year. So those 2 seasons are definitely the outliers there. And then the weird stats of success rate, which is basically like staying ahead of the chains. I looked it up. It's 40% of the yards on first down, 60% on second down, or 100% on third and fourth down, if you want to be a nerd about it. But the Chiefs have played 103 games with Patrick Mahomes. Among that sample, the Dolphins game ranked 101st in success rate, and he none of the Chiefs' 9 games this year have ranked in the top 50 for a Mahomes start all time. But keep in mind that is a team stat, not purely a Mahomes stat. It's like a team success stat. So like the running game struggling kind of factors into that. But just some weird stats. And then a stat that I found on my own that I found really interesting. I was doing a little digging, a little diving last night. Number of play action passes the last 3 years for Mahomes: 144, 148, and 143. You see the pattern there, right? This year, 50, which is a projected total of 94. So 50 fewer play action passes on the year. And I have no idea why. I can't point to any reason why that would be. I think it's fair to question why they're doing that. And if that's possibly leading to his struggles, is that something they're keeping close to their chest and saving that for the second half of the season or a playoff stretch? But the number of play action passes way down this year.
So some of the argument, I think, as far as this being Mahomes' worst season, even if you're just looking at like the counting stats, I mean, statistically, his worst year is 2019, but that's because he also missed 3 games and maybe even 4. I think it was 3. Regardless, he's currently on pace for 30 touchdowns. He's currently on pace for 14 interceptions, basically 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, which is not what you're looking for. The 4,300 yards would be the second worst of his career to 2019, as would his 30 touchdown passes. Here's one small surprise. Highest completion percentage of his career, if he sticks at the number he's at, it's 68.6, which rounds up to, Dirk?
Hang on.
68.6 rounds up to...
Carry the 1. 69.
Nice. It almost feels like they're including the interceptions in his completion percentage. I don't know. Most of the advanced stats, as you mentioned, a lot of them are hovering around 2021 levels, which, just as a reminder, everybody, this is the cover 2 year when the Chiefs went 12-5. They started 3-4. Then lost the Bengals twice in January because they couldn't seem to figure it out offensively, particularly against Lou Anarumo. And then they traded Tyreek and won a Super Bowl the next year. So, it's not been like the characteristically excellent Mahomes year, which is why I think so many people are like, don't know how to talk about him. It's like, but he's leading the race for MVP. And it's like, MVP. But I'm watching the games.
MVP. Yeah. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, he has a whole half season here to turn it around. So wouldn't close the book on this season for Mahomes yet. I mean, in the middle of 2021, those stats would have been pretty dreadful. And he turned that around in a big way, like the final 6-7 weeks kind of thing.
Right.
Let's move on here. Number 7. When does Travis Kelce finally hit a wall? When in traffic do you just want to drive into a wall? And could KC survive without him? So I have a few stats here. This one's sort of re-entering my radar. He had that big game against the Chargers. If he could just play the Chargers every week, I think he'd be Jerry Rice on steroids. Unfortunately, he cannot. A few stats here on Travis Kelce's season. His snaps are down from 80% last year to 71% this year. His yards per reception down from 12.2 to 10.5. His yards after catch down from 5.9 to 4.9. And his broken tackle stat, which is a weird one to see, but Pro Football Reference has it, so it's legit stats, down from 13 last year to 2 this year. And first downs, one more, down from 78 last year to a projected 62 this year. So just numbers kind of down across the board. This is not really taking a shot at Travis Kelce. He's 34, and hardly any NFL receivers perform at this age. So this is natural and probably expected. I guess the question is, can the Chiefs handle it? What do you think of Travis Kelce at this point?
There's a lot going on here, and I think it all plays a factor. I'm not going to question his leadership. I'm not going to question his lifestyle. I'm not going to question his commitment to excellence or anything along those lines, although I do miss questioning him recording a reality show during the NFL season. And he just, flew on Taylor Swift's private jet, who is already one of the number one polluters in the world as far as private jet air miles are concerned. And she's like, "Oh, Trent, you want to come down to watch my show in Argentina? I'll just send the jet for you."
Wait, were those advanced stats on Taylor Swift's jet? Was that what that was?
Well, I remember.
Are you trying to get backdoor Kiki back in this?
People were trying to find negative things about Taylor Swift. This was a few years back, and I believe that she was considered the number one polluter because she used her private jet more than any other person on the planet.
MVP,
right? Most valuable polluter. Look, I don't want to question leadership, lifestyle, commitment to excellence, anything along those lines, but I really don't like his splits with and without Taylor in the building. It feels like the exact type of thing that my stupid brain attached itself to before the Patrick Mahomes era. I would find all of these weird, superstitious reasons to be like, "Oh man, this is why we're going to end up losing. I can't wear opposing teams' colors during the week that we play them. Oh, it's Eagles week. No green in the wardrobe. Oh, every time I go to the microwave, I got to use Chiefs player numbers as my intervals." And I've been able to relax on some of that OCD type of Chiefs stuff. But man, the with and without Taylor Swift in attendance stats are alarming, and I really don't like them.
Okay, back to our Kiki just texted me. She reached out. She's listening live here. And she sent me the tour schedule. And there's a huge break. So it goes up till November 26th. And then there's a huge break until February 7th. So we might have T Swift in attendance for a good stretch there. But she might be missing the Super Bowl. I'm not sure about the Super Bowl date, but it smells like a Sunday, February 11th when she'll be in Tokyo. So we might have to get that private jet going again. Get some pollutant going down on this here Earth. For the good of the Chiefs. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry, Earth. We need it for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Just bring Tokyo to Vegas. She can perform in Vegas, where the Super Bowl is. Everybody that bought a ticket in Tokyo, she can just pick them up. Hop on the jet. Just pick them up. Let's go.
Everybody gets a free ticket to the Super Bowl for coming over.
Hey, actually, great point from Nick. Just let her perform the halftime show.
Win-win. It's a win-win.
Interesting point from the comments. Corey Peter asks how much more our defense is focusing on trying to take Travis away. I do think that he might be just straight up doubled. That's what a lot of the talk has been, is teams are basically forcing the Chiefs, anyone but Travis Kelce, beat us. Let's see what you can do. And so I think that there's something to that. There also might be something to just the travel and all the different commitments and the age. That's why I said there's so much going on here. I think that all of it probably plays a little bit of a factor, but it's Travis Kelce, man. I'm not worried about him. I do think that
if there's one person I would never question the commitment to this team, it would be Travis Kelce.
The end is
it's the way he speaks about the team, leaving money on the table. I'm all in this for the glory and winning as much as I can here and establishing my legacy here in Kansas City. There was no way I would ever question it. He could skip a game and go to a concert, miss a week and go to a concert that week, and I'd just be like, it's probably the best for the team. I believe in it. So I would never question him in anything he does in life. Let's move on. Go ahead.
I was gonna say real quick, I don't know if I've talked about this on the show, but my now wife, she is absolutely convinced that those two kids are getting married. Those two crazy kids are going to get married. This is what she tells me regularly. And anytime a new content drops involving the two of them, she's like, "Let me tell you right now, these two are going to get married." And I'm starting to see it a little bit. Don't tell her I said that.
Are we about to get some advanced stats on marriage here?
No, I will say, and I've always been kind of a sap, and having been recently wedlocked,
Oh boy.
maybe I'm particularly sappy.
Oh,
I gotta say, man, Travis and Taylor's dad at a concert in Buenos Aires, him wearing the Chiefs lanyard, and then the lyric getting changed, and both of them going, "Oh!" was absolutely. It was adorable.
the lyric was pretty wild.
Adorable. I don't care what anybody says. That was cute as heck. I mean,
the lyric was pretty wild. That was pretty wild.
it was good.
All right, that's good. Good on that.
There's our smut report.
Smut report.
People have been asking. They've been asking.
Yeah.
They needed more smut.
Yep. I hear you. All right. Question 8. Who finishes the season as the Chiefs' next best fantasy player behind Mahomes, Kelce? I don't want to spend any time on this really because just listen to our first 9 episodes of the season and we talk about the Chiefs' weapons ad nauseum. I do want to. The answer is Pacheco. He has been the next best fantasy player behind Mahomes and Kelce, followed closely by Rice. Although it might actually be Butker. I did not do the math on how he factors in having a great season. But I just wanted to talk about what we talked about in that preseason because we spent a good 5 minutes talking about Matt the Bush Man.
The Bush Man.
Spent 5 minutes. I don't know who the hell that is. Was he a Chief at some point? I have no idea who that man is. But we talked about him. I pretended to know who he was. So that happened. We both declared Sky Moore our guy. You compared him to Antonio Brown.
Only me?
Comparing him to Antonio Brown, we both declared him our guy.
I think
we were both all in.
You enthusiastically cheered it on. You were like, yes.
Well, I like the take. I like aggressive takes. I was not in on the take. I was like, no, I'm not going that far. Maybe he's like Golden Tate here. He's not Antonio Brown.
Okay.
We kerfuffled over MVS. And I think you won that kerfuffle. He's been pretty terrible. And then I shit all over your Justin Ross parade, who you would not shut up about. And that has been driven off the road here. So our weapons discussion did not go well. And it kind of, represents how the Chiefs season has gone for these weapons.
Just one like small declaration and like everyone.
If this is about Matt the Bushman, I'm hanging up. I'm hanging up the podcast.
It's not. I think everybody is on track here, but like Rashid Rice is clearly making a case to become one of the focal points in the second half of the season. He has to be. He absolutely has to be. And I think that you just have to tolerate the drops and keep firing the ball at him. Live with these occasional miscues. Like, I think that they just need to operate as if he is the best wide receiver on the team. And whether it's guys like T.O., relax. I know I'm not turning Rashid Rice into a Hall of Famer. Or even Dwayne Bowe. Yes, Dwayne Bowe. Look, we see guys like this that they just drop the ball sometimes. They struggle with it. And frankly, I don't care if he drops the ball, if he ends up putting it on the ground occasionally. He's still the best guy you got. Throw him the football. I want Rashid Rice to get like no fewer than 6 or 7 looks a game here on out. There's no excuse for him to have less than that.
I think he kind of just had the yips. I don't think he's going to be a guy that struggles with drops personally.
Yeah.
Just the vibe that I get. All right.
Yeah, he's a vomiter too. Like, just
vomiter.
Yeah. Didn't you remember the stories? He was throwing up in training camp, and he's like, honestly, I've thrown up before, like practically every single game. It's not because I'm out of shape. It's just kind of who I am. Whatever. I don't. He's fine. I love Rashid Rice.
All right, sorry. I was telling Nick to shut up because he said Rice struggled with drops last season at SMU. You didn't watch no SMU, Nick. You didn't watch no SMU. You don't know what you're talking about. Number 9, are the new tackles better, worse, or a push than the offensive tackles we had last year? This is everybody's favorite time, talking offensive line. This is where we thrive. Another one where I'm not totally really sure. I would lean push or maybe slight upgrade. A few numbers here. Brandon Thorne, who's a trusted voice about offensive line. He had us 4th in the preseason as like the collective best offensive line, 4th best in the league. And he has a 6th at midseason. He did some midseason rankings. So dropped a little bit, but still the 6th best offensive line. Obviously, that is carried by the interior, I would say. But the tackles factor into that, and this is kind of funny because we have the 6th highest paid offensive line in the NFL. So they're performing to exactly what they should be. ESPN has us at number 1 in pass block win rate. I think they did last year too. I don't know what this ESPN metric is. They always have us at number 1. It's just like locked in. I don't get what's going on. Any thoughts on how the offensive tackles have been? And be quick so we don't have to just fake this like we know what we're talking about.
Look, I'm no Brandon Thorne. I'm no Duke Manyweather. I'm no Sully Football. But I feel like the interior of the offensive line has been a real disappointment.
Oh,
they just don't feel dominant to me. And that's a pretty big letdown. I mean, just because they're rated super duper highly doesn't mean that they're always going to be able to pick up 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1, because I think that they are a different dominant. I think they are mostly excellent at pass blocking. But, when Andy Reid's throwing the ball 61% of the time, they're never really going to be in practice doing a lot of the running game stuff. And so
we got to get the offensive line in rhythm is what Ryan wants to say. Actually, it's not a bad point. I kind of shit on that, but that's not a bad point because, I mean, once an offensive line starts to like really wear the defense down, I think that's something they can feel. So I think there is a rhythm to that. Want to name any names on disappointing interior linemen?
I keep seeing this stat that Trey Smith hasn't allowed a sack this year or something. And I'm like, yeah, he has.
I thought he did against the Lions because he was getting beat by Hutchinson a lot, but I guess we didn't allow any sacks. So that would disprove my theory pretty quickly.
I don't. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I think they're all pretty good. I think Tooney's maybe kind of taking a step back, but generally speaking, I just don't think that they've been dominant. I'll put it that way.
I hear you. All right. Question 10. Last question here. What effect, if any, will be felt from losing offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy? I got to be honest, this is probably one that I kind of glossed over before the season. Not as like a shot at Eric Bieniemy. I think he's fine. I think we didn't really know, but just because I trusted all the voices in the room, and I just kind of, we're going to bring in Matt Nagy. He's been around before. And Andy, if there's anyone who knows how to build a staff, it's Andy Reid. So I just thought, the next guy would step up and we'd just replace him. And it's a strong enough, leadership that it wouldn't really factor in too much. But I got to say, as we go on here, this gets more and more prominent of a question every week. You got the Commies offense looking great. You got the Chiefs offense struggling this year. Specifically, the run game isn't as good as it was last year. Are we lacking physicality? Are we lacking attitude? Is that something that we're missing? His voice when it comes to that? What are your thoughts on Eric Bieniemy and how it's factored in to the offensive struggles this year?
I'm a little surprised at what I arrived at when I was thinking about this question, but based on how he's calling things in Washington, I think that Bieniemy might have been the guy that really challenged Andy to be more aggressive offensively. He has Sam Howell. Yes, more aggressive. I think that, and look, I don't know that much about the Commies, but
they're back.
He's got Howell number 1 in pass attempts per game in the NFL. He had that game where they threw the ball 56 straight plays. I definitely think that Andy needs to lean more aggressive more often, and Mahomes should probably take a few more risks, even with the turnover numbers where they are. I still think that he just needs to uncork the ball. Like, Pat, throw it, stop holding it, throw the ball, throw the ball, throw the ball, throw the ball.
Maybe that was Bieniemy's job. He was in his ear saying that while the play was going on.
I don't know. Here's the bottom line. Rhythm is precious, and it's been lacking, and I think that there are some moments, whether it's those marginal, should we or shouldn't we, punt, kick a field goal, go for it, take a shot at the end zone, all these different things, those little margins that show you being aggressive. And I think that if Andy started to lean into those aggressive things instead of my kicker can't miss and my defense is incredible. Like the things that are marks of a defensive team, and an all-pro kicker and an all-pro punter. Andy has all the reason in the world to not be aggressive. And I think that sometimes showing the faith in the offense, letting them go out there, try to extend a drive, it might be like the jolt that the offense needs. It might be the way to get them into rhythm. And so that's kind of, I think that maybe it was Bieniemy that was like, Andy, go. Dude, come on. Like, I know, coach, I know you want to play it safe, but like, let's go here. I think that's maybe what he was. He was obviously also an asshole. Like he was that dude that just challenged everybody. And so when I think about challenging Andy instead of like being in the players' butts, I think that might be what we're missing from Bieniemy. And just come on.
What? He's in their butts. What's weird about that? I don't see anything weird at all about Eric Bieniemy being in the players' butts. That is a totally normal sentence.
Thanks for holding me accountable.
That's kind of interesting. And the first thing I thought of was the fourth down before halftime against the Bengals in the AFC Championship game. And they went for that. Or maybe it wasn't fourth down, but, with only 3 seconds left in the half. So it was essentially a fourth down. And they did not get that. And there's all the weird stuff about, like, maybe Bieniemy and Mahomes yelling at each other in the locker room. There's just all these weird stories that kind of came out about it. And I don't know if we really got the true story. And I don't know if there really is much of a story other than competitive people being competitive and being angry that we didn't get it. But that is interesting. I mean, that could have been Bieniemy pushing for that, no, let's go this. We got this play. We can put this in at, before halftime and really end this game. But that is an interesting theory. And I hadn't thought about that leading to that fourth down. I do think Andy tends to get, he's kind of had some conservative seasons before, and he kind of gets aggressive more in the playoffs. He's gone for some risky fourth downs in playoffs when it's crunch time. So I do think he might come around on that. And he might just kind of be building up the team, trusting everybody, like placing that trust in everybody all season and then kind of helping unleash. All right. That is it. We made it through all the 10 questions. We have refreshed. We have reflected. Oh, Jesus. I'm getting close to these words, but not quite doing it. But I am QB2 at the host. So, it's been a little shaky here. But we have reflected on the entire season. All that we're going to do now is look forward to next week. Chiefs versus Eagles, a tiny little preview here because it's such a big game. I kind of laid it all out earlier about everything that's on the table. A really fun game. It's going to be great to see it in Arrowhead Stadium. Questions are about the grass. I heard they're flying out the grass from the Super Bowl last year and putting it in Arrowhead Stadium for this game so that the Eagles can really appreciate that slick turf, make them feel a little more home. What are your thoughts on Chiefs-Eagles this Monday night?
I think that this is probably one of like the 2 or 3 most important games to the NFL on the calendar, giving both teams a bye week beforehand, really allowing them in Monday night standalone. Like Sunday night almost usually feels like the real like game of the week. But it didn't used to be. Monday night was always the most special. And I think for a long time, there wasn't even a Sunday night game. It was noon and 3:25 and then Monday night. And so, I think that Monday night's lost its luster, but I think that having this game standalone, these 2 best teams in each conference, as we mentioned kind of at the top of the show, plus the Taylor Swift, plus the Kelces, all the extra zhuzh of it all. Yeah. It's a big game. It's a massive game, and I can't wait to watch every single second of pregame. I'm going to be on Thanksgiving break. It's going to be absolutely delightful. Yeah, we get the whole week off.
Whole week?
Pays to be a public school educator.
Boy, when I was young,
the days off that you get, salary ain't great. Anyway,
now I'm upset. I am upset. I'm fired up.
I'm actually like really excited for this game. I was looking at tickets. The cheapest single human ticket to get in there, according to whatever I was looking at, probably Tickets for Less, because
shout out to them.
Money, Tickets for Less. Shout out to you guys. You guys were even supporting Amateur Hour before we were on this big network. Good people over there at Tickets for Less. I think it's like 320, 325 to try to get into the stadium for that game next Monday. That's a lot. It's a lot of money. It is an expensive time to be a Chiefs fan.
Somebody get Ryan a wedding present, damn it.
Now we're talking. Bless the Venmo, folks. All right. I'll say this. The Chiefs drop these games often, particularly to AFC opponents. They almost always lose to like Cincinnati or Buffalo during the regular season, and they tend to go pretty vanilla in those games so that they can pull some things out when they inevitably face them again in the playoffs. I don't know how Andy is going to approach this one when it's coming out of the bye, opportunity to make a pretty big statement. I don't know. I think it's going to be a lot of ways. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I do think that both offenses are really good, but did you happen to see? I retweeted it from the podcast account. People tend to scroll past Schefter tweets a lot anymore. It's like it's either a like 2-line actual news thing, or it's some agent speak that's really long and we don't really care that much. He tweeted out a clip from his podcast, and he talked to Trent McDuffie on his podcast, and he was asking them about, you're playing the Eagles, it's a new season, but like, is there some residual from the Super Bowl? Like, are you thinking about the Super Bowl as you're preparing for this team? And one of the things that McDuffie said was, I'll tell you what we're thinking about is we gave up 35 points in the Super Bowl. Spags is not happy about it. We are not happy about it. And we never want that to happen. It doesn't matter if we win the game or not. 35 points is way too many, particularly for the way the defense is playing this year. So I think that they are definitely going to come to play. The Eagles, there's nothing surprising. And that's not even a shot at Sirianni. Like, the Eagles are that team that it's like, we're going to do what we do. And can you stop it? And so I think it's going to be what do they call that? Like a battle of wills or something. Whatever. I'm excited. I think it's going to be an excellent game.
Fucking Sirianni. I fucking hate that schmohawk.
Why don't you like him?
He's so smug. You don't. He doesn't bother you?
I don't think that I see enough of him to be bothered, but
his faces that he's making and just his smirking and his
he's the crown jewel of the Todd Haley coaching tree.
He is a little Todd Haley. He is a little Todd Haley.
I mean, he was like a quality control coach, like an entry level NFL job in Todd Haley's coaching his first staff or whatever. And so I've always kind of like, you know how I was. I liked Todd Haley. I was a Todd Haley guy.
I could have slapped Todd Haley a time or two, but I'd really like to slap Sirianni. You kind of talked about them giving up those points. The Eagles also did a lot of talking this offseason. About the field and just about the refs a little bit. A lot of talking. And I feel like that's almost kind of swung it back to, you've called me Mr. Motivation before. But doing all that talking, it's just like, all right, you think we didn't beat you legitimately last time? Like, all right, let's do it again. So I do think both teams are going to come in fired up. I mean, obviously the Eagles are going to want revenge for losing that game. My big question, I guess, the Chiefs defense has been fantastic. But I kind of question if they're built more to stop like a high flying offense like Miami, just because of all those, secondary weapons and Spags getting into third down and mixing it up and bringing all these different blitzes like that. Are they really built to stop like a ground and pound defense? Because they're really going to get in two tight end sets and they're going to run the ball right at them. And the run defense has kind of been the weakness. And Miami, has a really great run offense. And the Chiefs did a pretty good job again in that game for most of the game, but it's kind of a finesse running offense, and it's kind of like a Shanahan zone running style where the Eagles are just going to run straight at you. Yeah. And so I do kind of think they're built better to stop like a Dolphins type of offense than they are like an Eagles type of offense. So I actually think it's going to be kind of higher scoring. I think the Chiefs offense is going to wake up a little bit. The Eagles secondary has been pretty poor all year. It'll be a huge game for those tackles, like we talked about. This will be kind of like a good measuring point for how they've done this year compared to what we had last year. So I think we're going to need the Chiefs offense to wake up, and I think they will kind of wake up. And I'm expecting kind of a higher scoring game. I'm expecting like a game of the year type of game. And so, I've kind of been on the right end of some Chiefs predictions here. I'm going to go, classic barn burner that comes down to the end, both teams going back and forth. And it's kind of everything that people have been wanting to see this season with offense down. I think it'll be higher scoring. I'm going like 34-31 Chiefs on this. And I think it'll be.
I think it's going to be tighter than that. And look, I'll say this. There are a couple things in there. Number one, I think that L'Jarius Sneed is going to tussle with AJ Brown all night long. And I think that McDuffie is largely going to end up seeing Devonta Smith. I wouldn't even be surprised if Spags just said, these are the matchups, and you guys are just going to play man on them all night long. Would not be surprised if that's how it goes.
Which is
I don't know if people recognize it.
Sorry, I think AJ Brown caught that deep touchdown on McDuffie in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Something to keep in mind with Hurts. He's thrown 8 picks himself. They're turning the ball over too. So he will put it up for grabs for the Chiefs to be able to make some plays on defense. They do have an excellent offensive line, but you can still create pressure and cause havoc, especially with Spags being in his bags. Bags. The main thing, though, when I think about this Eagles offense, I want people to remember who their running back is. It's DeAndre Swift, and the guy has been great this year, particularly in fantasy purposes. But DeAndre Swift is a slasher. He's the exact type of running back that the Chiefs in years past have struggled with because he gets out in space, and he's very fast, easy to get to the edge. The Chiefs struggle in power running game, which to me is more about the Eagles and Jalen Hurts than it is about Swift. Don't get me wrong, the blocking is great, but like not having Nick Bolton against an Eagles running game that is really strong and efficient, that is scary and it sucks. But like typically with a guy like DeAndre Swift, I would be more worried about what he can do in space. And the way that Willie Gay and Drew Tranquill and Leo Chenal have been playing, and frankly, the way that the defensive backs come up and tackle, I think that they can continue to slow down this running game for Philadelphia. And it's going to come down to Hurts making plays in the passing game against these corners and those big time receivers that they have making plays against these corners. It is going to be a battle outside the hash marks. It's going to be going on out there rather than this big time thing we think might be in the trenches. I think that this game is going to be happening through the air, and I don't think that either team is going to find that much success. I do think it's going to be low scoring. I'd probably say like in that neighborhood of like 22-17 or something along those lines.
Ooh,
and I choose a 22 purely out of Marcus Peters and Trent McDuffie love. Even though Trent McDuffie is now number 21, right? He was 22.
Really talk yourself out of that one. All right, so who's winning that? Who scores 22?
I don't know yet.
Oh, people aren't here for you to say I don't know. That's our offensive line takes is I don't know. You can't be a game predicting I don't know.
I'm choosing Andy Reid off the bye against his former team to become the winningest coach in the history of the Kansas City Chiefs and Philadelphia Eagles. I am choosing the Chiefs in a nail biter, highly entertaining, but I don't think there's going to be as many points on the scoreboard.
Awesome. Sounds good. I love it. It's too poetic for him to, he would be the only coach, right, to lead 2 different franchises in wins all time.
Correct.
It's too poetic for that to happen against his former team. It just kind of makes too much sense. Sometimes that means it doesn't happen, but I choose to believe in the Disney ending, much like Ryan, who believes in love. All right. I think we're all done here. Ryan, you want to take us out of here? I have no idea how to close a podcast, even though I have filled in decently. I've done a decent job. I've Chad Henney'd it up.
Yeah, you have stepped in and performed admirably, right around 500, I guess, right? But we can count on you in the crunch. Folks, this has been Amateur Hour. I'm Ryan Scott Hall. He's HisDirkness. Justin Herbert is Phillip Rivers. And really, for all the OGs out there, I can't wait for you guys to see the runtime on this one. You're going to be like, holy crap, they're back. They're back, an hour and 20 minutes. Yes, I can't wait. And look, folks, while we're at it, before we actually say goodbye, go buy some of the new stuff from Sandlot Goods. KCSN's got a new merch sponsor. Got some good stuff. Got them in the mail. It's looking great. It's feeling great. So go spend your money on KCSN. Christmas is coming. And don't forget the big raffle that they do and the thing for the kids. I don't remember what it's called, but Christmas time. Yeah. Be generous.
I could slap Sirianni with this thing right across the face.
There you go. He deserves it. All right. I will say it again. I'm Ryan Scott Hall. He's HisDirkness. And Justin Herbert is Phillip Rivers.